I met Kevin out on his driveway one afternoon, and as I walked up to him, I noticed that his yard was full of broken alcohol bottles. So I started my canvas with the Ministry of Healing, and I told him about it and how it helps us overcome addictions. And he didn't say anything, but he held the book in his hand really tight. So I showed him the next book, The Great Controversy, and I shared with him how it covers the last 2,000 years. And as soon as I said that, he handed the book back to me and he said, "I don't care what happens in the last 2,000 years. I want to know what's next." And I was really confused, and so I said, "What do you mean?" As soon as I asked that question, he got really emotional and he said, "My son died a couple years ago, and I want to know what's next." And then I realized what this man was saying. He didn't know if there was any hope. So I prayed for wisdom and I handed The Great Controversy back to him and I said, "Sir, this book not only covers the last 2,000 years, but also tells us what's happening in the future. It helps answers questions like, what happens after death? Why would a God of love allow so much pain and suffering? And then it climaxes with the second coming of Jesus, our hope." And after I shared that with him, he silently reached into his pocket, pulled out some money and handed it to me, and took both books. And I said, "Sir, can I pray with you before I go?" And he nodded his head. I prayed with him, and I just pled with God to give him hope and comfort and peace. And as soon as I finished praying, the man gave me a big hug, and he quietly turned around and walked into his house. But when he hugged me, I could smell the alcohol in his breath, and I realized that this was a hurting man, someone who didn't want to be addicted to alcohol, but who hadn't found a solution for his pain. So as I went back out onto the street, I just stopped to pray for him, and I just pled with God again for him and for his situation. And as I was thinking about him, I remembered that on the back of the Desire of Ages that we carry, there's a quote that says, "Through all our trials, we have a never-failing helper." So I thought, I must give this book to him. And he had given enough in donations anyway, so I walked back to his house and I knocked on his door to give him the Desire of Ages. But no one came to the door, and I knocked, and then it dawned on me that he was so hard of hearing that he couldn't hear my knock on the door. And I realized that if it hadn't been for God bringing him outside at the time that I arrived, I may have very well never met him. God cares so much for him that he brought him outside so I could minister to him. So I wrote him a note, I left the Desire of Ages on his door, and I walked away, and I thought, wow, here was someone searching for the truth that we have in such desperate need of it, and why would God choose me to go to his door? God could have sent an angel, he could have reached him any other way, but he chose me to go. And so I thank God for arranging circumstances so perfectly, and at that moment I also rededicated myself to God and asked him to help me to labor tirelessly to reach souls for the rest of the summer.